Welcome back to my channel Conquer the Fear. Are you tired of dealing with the null pointer exceptions in Java and you want to level up your Java skills and nail those interviews? Well, you have clicked on the right video. So, in between this video, I'm going to share you a bonus tip. So, make sure you watch the video till the end. Now, whether you are preparing for an interview or just simply trying to write a better code, you have to master the optional feature in Java, and that is a must thing. So in this video, we will cover all the real world examples, the top interview questions, and the best practices you can discuss about the optional. Java optional, this is one of the important features introduced in Java as part of Java 8. Now this is going to demonstrate how we can effectively handle the null values in the Java code and also this video will cover the best practices where you can use optional to incorporate in your code, so which is going to make your code cleaner, more robust, and less error prone. Now, what is the problem with the null? So basically, why was there is an introduction of optional? So we'll look into that. We all know that when you're dealing with null, so Java can have a major pain point. It is very difficult to handle this null pointer exception or null, right? So this was the main issue. The accessing the methods or a field on a certain object, right, which was used to lead to a null pointer exception. Hence, your entire application was not properly being handled properly. So it is to bring down your application. So if you see here, there is a traditional way, right? I've written a Java user class over here, and if you see the line which is showing that user is equal to null, which is going to check in the traditional way whether that particular object is null or not. Okay. Now, we'll definitely looking into the real code. Okay, so I will be going to the IntelliJ code and I will explain you each line by line what exactly is prior to Java and what is happened after the Java 8, right, which has the optional. So we'll look into the both the codes, what is the problem with before Java 8 optional, and what is the solution with Java 8 optional. Okay. So in this particular thing, I mean, as we already discussed, there is an optional class which is designed in a modern way for dealing the potential null pointer checks, right? So null values we can check that. So this is, it is going to encapsulate the presence of an object or a value, right? So which is going to eliminate where you do the repetitive null checks. Okay, so using optional, what we have done is that if you see here in the return statement, the user dot map, now it is going to check if there is a null or not, or as well if there is an it doesn't find it, it is going to return or else an alternative value for it. Okay, before going to the code, I wanted to understand when you are creating an objects, right? So optional has got different methods of null, empty, is present, is empty. So these are all going to check and give you a benefit when you are using optional as a class, whether it will check whether this particular optional value will hold a value or not, whether this particular option is empty or not, if there is some missing value or not, or whether it is having present. Let's say it is some value is present in it, so it is going to return true, or whether where the value is empty or not, it is going to return true in that way. So these are the simple utility methods which were introduced as part of this. Now, how do you access those particular values? You have to, there is a get method which is going to retrieve, or either if it is not able to retrieve, it is going to throw an exception if it is going to, you have to use it very cautiously, right? And then there is an if present which is going to take execute the code block if the value is present. Okay, there is an or else which is going to check if the value is present or not, or it will return your present value. Or else throw, actually basically it is going to check if there is some value, or else it will throw a exception. So now let's jump into the code. So we are here on the IntelliJ IDE. Now I've created a couple of projects inside it, and under that I've created some classes. Okay. So if you open this particular class, now I've written how you have written this particular null values, how you used to check that prior to when the introduction of Java optional. Now if you look at this particular user service, I've written this particular class to clearly indicate this is before the optional. So what in this particular method, if you see here, we have actually taken the user, and earlier what we used to do is that we used to call the user is equal to null. So we used to check this particular value, and then we are going to perform some activity, or else we used to, if the value is present, then we used to check that and go ahead and then does that, right? Similarly, if you are using this particular same for address, similar approach was written. Okay, so in this, actually, if there was only if and else, here as there is an if else, else if, and then there is an else, right? Similarly, we have applied this for a different check as well. So we have take for the null values and other things. Now let's look at the counterpart, that is after we introduce the Java optional. Okay, so now let's look at the example over here. Now if you look at this particular thing, now if you see, I've made use of an optional class over here. Now this is going to be passed as an optional over here, but if you look at this particular thing, the user map, it is going to check here, see the value. Okay, this value, if it is present, then it will return, or else it will throw, or it will return some unknown value. So this is the benefit where it is comes very handy, that if it doesn't find any value, what is the alternative you have to return. Similarly, I made use of an optional of null value. So it is going to check, right, this particular value is null or not, or else it is going to throw that it is not found any address over here. Similarly, if you see, I've checked here the greetings. It is going to check for the first optional value, it is going to present or not, and then that is will return. And then, or else if it is doesn't find it, then it's going to return the else part. So this is how it will drastically change your way how you write the code. It looks very concise. It's where it is going to execute in a proper way. So people who is going to look at the particular code is going to concisely understand what you have written, because earlier, like, you used to write the boilerplate code of is equal to check and other stuff, but here it is going to give you a proper way of handling the nulls over here. Now we are going to go through some of the best practices for using the Java optional. Now when you're using Java optional, your code would be significantly enhanced with the code quality. Now it is important that you avoid some common mistakes. Okay, uh, now let's discuss. So what are the best practices? That you should always avoid unnecessary optional creation. So although optional is the best way to use, and in a concise way to write it, but you should not use it in every situation. Okay, so let's say you don't create an optional object, and when you can return a default value, or you handle a null in a more efficient way, so that's where you can use it. Now what example this says is that we'll look into the actual code. Now, if you look at the very first example I've showcased here, what is the incorrect way? Now, if you see here, this the null is already been checked over here. Now you are trying to see optional dot of null value. Now this is very incorrect, because you are wrapping the optional as a of right for. Now the best way to do is that you can simply check it over here, and you can simply return the value over here. So that is, this is an unnecessary thing. You are trying to create a complicated situation over here. Second, embrace the optional method for a safety and elegance. Now, when you're using optional, the built-in methods like or else throw, or if present, you can use to handle the absence of the value, and it in a clean and the readable manner. So let's look into the code. So let's close the other examples over here. Let's open the optional. Now I've written two ways, where actually one is the incorrect way. Now if you look in this particular thing, now this is going to return message not is equal to null, right? The message is going to be used, and then the default value. So yeah, we have null check with a ternary operation over here, right? Now what we have to do is that, in place of using the optional, right, what we can do is that instead of this ternary operation, right, what we can do here is that we can call the message over here, which is passing the optional over here, and then we can also check if it is that is present or not. Okay, so it doesn't need to apply this ternary operation over here. You can simply check if it is present or not, or else you can return a default value over here. Now isn't this a concise way, or is it the better way to write it? Definitely, right? Now, if you look at the third thing, we are going to look at the chaining optional operation. Now, this is one of the cool and the one of the feature of optional. So you can chain multiple operations together. Now, this is particularly going to help some certain complex logic where you need, okay. So you have some multiple null checks values to be handled in a very sequential manner, right? This we use it. Now let's look at the optional chaining. Now what I took called about is that if you see the before the code, okay, so here we have multiple null checks over here. Now what we are doing, we're checking null over here, we are checking the null over here, and then we are trying to access the address, okay. So this is a different, older way to write the code. Now after the optional was introduced, right, we can make use of the chaining functionality. Now what we can do, first we can check the optional if it's of null or not value for the address, okay. If it is checking if it is value, it is, then it is going to, you make use of an or else, right. So this is one of the chaining way where you can, doesn't find it the value, it is going to return no address hasn't found. So this is a better way to write it. Now there are some common pitfalls and also the solution I've defined over here. So when you're using optional, you can also, there are some pitfalls which you can avoid. Okay, we look into it, right? So what we use that we should not overly using the optional. So now when the optional feature is been given, right, so we should try avoiding right everywhere whatever it is required. So you shouldn't be using method to return it, or the value is guaranteed the, let's say, to be a non-null, right. So then in that case we can use it. We can having the incorrectly handling optional way. So what we can do, make sure you are handling your empty the optional in the instance very gracefully. For example, don't directly try to call the get method on an empty optional object, or it will throw an exception. Now misusing the optional for a control flow. Now you should always avoid using the optional as a replacement for some complex or a control logic, flow logic. So this is optional is not definitely meant for that. So make sure you use it for in a proper way. So we'll look into the code. Now if you see, we already discussed the overusing of the optional. Now if you see, the very first thing, we are using optional of, then we are getting it, then we are stop stringing it, right. So what might happen in this case is that there is a possibility of throwing an exception, like, there is no such element inside it. So make sure you doesn't do make it complex when you are dealing with the optional. Keep as it is simple, right. The better way is that you will make use of this optional, and then after that you will try to map it and see whether there is some substring available or not, or else if it is not able to find it is definitely going to return a different value over here. Now this is going to be a better way, right. Instead of this, it will throw an error over here. I hope this example is very clear to you, and you understand what not to do when it comes to option. Now let's look at the key changes with respect to optional, right? So we'll talk about wrapping an object in an optional. Now instead of directly passing the user objects, let's say, to the method, right, we can wrap it inside an optional, like optional of null, and then we can use it. So this is going to explicitly handle the presence or in presence of an user object. We can, when using the map, flat map, you have to directly extract the value, right. So make sure you use this particular if present or inside it, right. uh, we can handle the absence, like, using with the help of or else. We can make use of the functional programming, like when it comes to, using along with the map, flat map, or else, right. So it is more a declarative way and more a relative readable way. Now I'd like to show you one of the uh, big example with respect to optional. Now this particular code, what I've written over here, is before the how, Java optional was introduced. Now what we used to do is that we have a user over here, we have created a constructor over here, and then we have written a service over here, and then we are trying to call the get user method over here. What is happening inside is that we are trying to, traditionally we are going to use this in this similar way, right. So it is going to check some values and then is going to return it, okay. Let's say I nullify some value over here, okay. So what will happen over here is that we are going to return some unknown user, unknown address, no address has been found. So some different value will be coming over here. So this is one of the, I would say, older way to write it, but when it comes to writing the modern way, right, let's look at the better way of writing it. Okay, so if you look at here, right, after the optional has been introduced, right, so the same code whatever I have written over here, is written in a very graceful way. Now, if you see, using the optional, you can wrap it over here, right? So optional I have taken over here. We have a optional value over here. We are checking all this particular user when we are checking on it. Okay. So even this is nullify over here, it is going to check here, right? The null value, and then it is gracefully handling that particular value. I hope this particular example is very clear to you, and I was able to explain you what exactly optional is about, what are the different common pitfalls, what is, like, you can expect as an option to give you as a benefit when it comes to writing a clean code. Okay. Now I have a request for you all. I have seen, like, according to the analytics, I'm able to see that people who are watching my video are not trying to subscribe it. I would request you all to please subscribe to my channel, so that if I'm trying to upload some interesting videos like this, you are notified. Okay, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon.